The sky was weeping that night, steady, cold rain falling in rhythmic taps against the cracked sidewalk, as if the heavens themselves mourned something unseen. The streetlights cast long, shivering shadows across the soaked pavement, and the distant hum of passing cars felt like ghosts whispering in the dark. In a quiet corner of South Carolina, inside a nearly empty 24-hour diner that smelled faintly of bacon grease and loneliness, a woman sat alone at a booth near the window. Her name was Avery Monroe, and though she looked calm on the outside, skin deep brown, eyes tired but kind, hands wrapped tightly around a mug of dollar coffee, her world was quietly crumbling beneath the surface. 34 years old, a mother to none but caretaker to many, Avery had been pushing through a life that felt like it had given up on her long before she ever had the chance to dream. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength it takes to keep going when no one sees your pain, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. These stories are here to remind us that hope still lives in everyday hearts. Avery had finished her third shift of the week at the nursing home. Her back ached, her shoes were soaked, and her phone screen was cracked from dropping it during her bus transfer. The coins in her pocket barely covered a late-night plate of eggs and toast, but it was her one indulgence, a small comfort in a life defined by giving more than she ever received. She wore her pain like armor, smiling through it, because she had always believed that strength meant never letting people see how deeply you were hurting. But that night, the ache was heavier than usual. Her landlord had left a final warning taped to her door. Her little brother, who she had helped raise since their mother passed, had just been arrested again. And despite everything she did for others, she couldn't help but feel like she was invisible to the world. Then the bell above the diner door jingled softly, and an old man walked in. He looked like he'd stepped out of a storm and a storybook all at once, thin, fragile, and soaked through to the bone. His beard was snowy white, ragged and unkempt. His coat hung off his shoulders like a memory that didn't fit anymore. His boots were torn, soles flapping with each step like tired wings. But it was his eyes that stopped Avery from taking another sip of her coffee. They were a pale, watery blue, lost, tired, but still searching, still alive. The waitress at the counter looked up and offered a polite but weary smile. The man didn't respond. He just sat at the far end of the counter, opened the menu slowly as if savoring the idea of food, and then gently closed it again with a sigh. He didn't order, didn't ask, just sat there. Avery watched the exchange quietly, her heart already moving before her mind could stop it. She knew what was happening. She had seen it before, people coming in just for warmth, knowing they'd be asked to leave. The waitress was kind, but rules were rules, and customers had to pay. Avery had seen enough in her lifetime to know that dignity, once lost, was hard to reclaim. And something in the way the old man gripped the edge of the counter, as if it were the only solid thing left in his world, made her chest ache. So she stood up. Without fanfare, without introducing herself, she walked up to the counter and asked the waitress to bring the man whatever he wanted, her treat. Eggs, toast, coffee, maybe even a slice of pie if he liked sweets. The waitress blinked in surprise, but nodded with a grateful smile. The old man looked over, stunned, as if he hadn't been acknowledged by another human being in weeks. His lips trembled. He tried to protest, but Avery just nodded once, softly, and returned to her booth. That was enough. A gift with no strings, no speeches, no cameras, just kindness. The man ate slowly, carefully, like someone remembering what it felt like to be full. When he finished, he approached her table, gently placed a folded napkin beside her mug, and with a hoarse whisper said, "Thank you for seeing me." Avery nodded. That was all. She left minutes later, wrapped in her thin coat, the rain still falling as she walked the 2 miles home because she didn't have enough for a cab and the last bus had long since passed. She didn't think about the man again that night. Didn't expect anything. That wasn't why she had helped him. She had grown up on the principle that when you can give, you give. Even if it's the last thing you have. But life, as it often does when we least expect it, was already moving in quiet, mysterious ways. The next morning, just after dawn, Avery was woken by a knock on her front door. She sat up slowly, rubbing sleep from her eyes and trying to ignore the way her knees cracked when she moved. She wasn't expecting anyone. Peering through the window, she froze. There, parked just outside her modest, aging apartment building, was a pickup truck. Not just any truck, but a restored, gleaming, cream-colored 1965 Chevrolet C10, polished to perfection, chrome gleaming in the sunlight. The kind of truck that collectors drooled over, the kind that didn't just show up in neighborhoods like hers. Standing next to it was a sharply dressed man holding a manila envelope. He introduced himself as Charles Whitman, an attorney representing the estate of one Mr. Thomas Ellison. Avery blinked, confused, until the name clicked. The old man. The diner. Last night. The lawyer continued with words that didn't make sense at first. Words like bequeathed, beneficiary, personal gift. Thomas had passed away in his sleep just hours after their encounter. According to his will, amended just weeks earlier, he had arranged for the truck, along with a sizable sum of money, to go to the woman who reminded me I was still human. That woman was Avery. Inside the envelope was a letter. Written in shaky cursive on hotel stationery, the letter explained that Thomas had once been a wealthy business owner, someone who had spent his life building, buying, selling. But in the end, after losing his wife and estranging his children, all he had left were regrets and a weathered truck he had lovingly restored with his own hands. He had been on his way to give it to a donation center when he stopped at the diner. And then Avery saw him. Not as a charity case. Not as a ghost, but as a man. He wrote that in a single moment, she had given him more than money, she had given him dignity. And that was the last thing he wanted to give her in return. The money wasn't millions, but it was enough. Enough to pay off her debts. Enough to move out of her cramped apartment and into a small house where she could grow her own garden and maybe, just maybe, stop working 3 jobs to survive. The truck became a symbol, a vessel of hope. She didn't sell it, she drove it proudly, and everywhere she went, people asked her about it. And when they did, she told them the story. Not about a rich man or a lucky break, but about kindness. About how one meal, one small gesture, could ripple into something life-changing. Over the following months, her story spread. Local papers picked it up. A small nonprofit even offered her funding to start a community kitchen, a dream she'd buried long ago under bills and exhaustion. She named it Ellison's Table in honor of the man whose life had crossed hers for one quiet night. It became a safe place for the forgotten, the weary, the hungry. No questions, no judgments, just food, warmth, and the reminder that someone cared. Avery never sought the spotlight, but her heart became a lighthouse to those in stormy seas. If this story touched your soul, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. Every story we tell reminds someone that goodness is still alive, and maybe, just maybe, it inspires them to be the reason someone smiles today. Special request. If you've ever received or offered kindness at a moment when it mattered most, please share it in the comments. Your story could be the hope someone else needs to hear today.